Let me just say, I hate space. Starting off with that, I know that it's gonna sound like that I was insane for picking this game up. I put off playing this game for about half a decade. I know that the game came out in around 2013, 2014. I've known about the game since really when it came out, and I've known that I have wanted to play it since then. That's where we come to the main issue of why I haven't played it until now. In all honesty, I was scared as hell. That game intimidated me, and I just continued to put it off. In truth, I was going to continue putting it off until I got a call from my brother on the way home from a job interview a couple weeks ago, and he was like, hey, I bought a game and I'm sending it to the house. It's a late birthday gift, but I know we've both really wanted to play it. So in my brain, I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's like Tormented Souls. I wasn't really sure what it was. Fast forward about a week and a half, and I'm opening the package with a pair of scissors, and I slide out a blue PlayStation 4 game case to find Alien Isolation for the PlayStation 4 staring back at me. I sighed as I looked at it, and I went, well, it's finally time. And so at that point, I went upstairs, I took Alien Isolation to let it download what it needed to, and I went downstairs to make some coffee to strap in. I know and have known that it's always been lauded as one of the best video games of all time. I knew that the praise that the Xenomorph AI has been talked about for over a decade, that its intelligence in just like finding you has been talked about since its launch. So in truth, I was equally excited to be able to finally experience it, and truthfully afraid, because I knew that even with all of its praise, it's still talked about as being a very intensive game. So I was a little wary, a little hesitant going into it. And in truth, I was right about that. In the end, it was truthfully really intense to play through from start to finish. It felt like the first couple chapters were fine, and then it felt like your foot went all the way down on the gas and it never let up for the rest of the 16 missions of the game. In truth, I could only really play it in small doses because of the absolute abject dread that I feel like you just sit in for the entirety of the game. You could be going into any room. It was always really horrifying to walk up to a save station thinking that you're fine, you don't hear really anything, and going to save and it says hostiles nearby and you're like, oh shit, like that's not good. So yeah, I did eventually pop in the disc, and I took a break from playing Resident Evil games back to back, as I had played through 7 and then 2 and then 3 and 4 back to back, and so I had downloaded 5 ready to go, and then that's when Alien Isolation got here, and I was like, okay, we're gonna take a break and we're gonna play a different kind of survival horror game. It took me about 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks to play through the whole thing. It probably shouldn't have taken me that long. Like, I don't think it's meant to be that long of a game, but I don't know. It felt longer than some people told me that it was going to be, but maybe that's just how I play games. To be completely honest with you, the game was honestly a little bit more terrifying than it should have been to play through, and that's because I did a really stupid thing and I decided to only play it at night in the dark of my room for like the full immersion, and it truly did not disappoint. The gameplay was phenomenal. I mean, I have never played a game where I have felt such abject fear of trying to get from one locker to somewhere else that I can have some kind of gurney or table or desk or something in between me and whatever else is in this room with me, or between me and where Xenomorph would drop from the ceiling. So playing it at night in the dark almost exclusively did absolutely add to my personal experience of the game. And while it absolutely made it more terrifying, I don't think that I would have wanted it to be in the daylight. Like, I think that it added just like a layer of immersion that I'm glad that I did that. I had such a great time with sneaking through hallways or corridors or under tables and trying to avoid not only the xenomorph but also Working Joes or regular humans, that it's like I have to decide very quickly, are you friend or foe? You know, like, are you going to fuck me up or am I going to fuck you up? One of my favorite moments was, I want to say it was like mission 5. I remember hiding in a locker, walking through a certain corridor. It was like a U-shaped corridor, and to avoid being spotted by the xenomorph, because I don't really know why, but I remember for this section of the game, it like never went back up into the ceiling, like regardless of how long you sat there. So I think it was just constantly roaming regardless. So I like hid in a locker for it to pass me by as I was going down through the corridor to reach my objective. And then after doing that and needing to go back through the corridor, I hid in the same locker, and I didn't realize it at the time. But when it passed by that time, even though I held my breath and leaned back away from the locker, it learned my patterns and it immediately grabbed me out of the locker. And the fact that it learned my particular patterns with playing a game was so immersive and scary as hell. In truth, it was so much fun for me to have to try to almost outsmart myself, making sure that I don't play a game the way that I normally do, because I knew that if I did that, it was going to learn how I did things and that it was going to then follow those paths. Another thing is just like the motion tracker in general. I was talking with my brother about the game a little bit, and we were talking about how in nightmare mode, you don't get the motion tracker, and I don't think you get the map either, and I know that you get like way less resources. And at first we were like, holy shit, like that's insane. And like, while I do still think not having the map is insane, after beating the game, I'm like, not having the motion tracker is a blessing. I cannot tell you the amount of times that the motion tracker would beep towards the end of the game when like things start to get really intense, and I would audibly in my room say, shut the fuck up, like stop. It got to a point where I'm like, why would anybody ever pull this out? It makes noise and things will hear it. I can just use my eyes and just be careful. The only room that I can think of that it would be useful in is that one room that you go into earlier on and then you go into at the very end when you're trying to like help the Torrens dock, that has stairs down to the left and right side that working Joes walk around and monitor the first time that you're in there, and then the second time that you're in there, there are 2 xenomorphs, I believe. When I was in there the first time with that room, that one is kind of helpful because you're trying to sneak past a couple working Joes that it's just easier to know where they're at. It's so corridory that it's hard to see where it's at. Regardless, point being, motion tracker is a blessing to not have on nightmare runs, I think. Another thing that I really enjoyed was just the innovation with the controller, with how it would have you do things. Like when you needed to pull a double-handed lever, it would be hold L2 and R2, and then you needed to use left and right stick and then like pull it down. There were just so many things like that. I was just like, that's so incredible, because like I feel like no games ever do that, and it's like, why don't you do that? Like that feels so much fun to me. It feel a little bit more immersive and a little bit more like I'm there. I felt like those kinds of button interaction points should be more common in games, in truth. I feel like that's just a really interesting way to do things that you don't really see in games. It's more just like press X to pull this, or pick your button for what controller that you use. I use PlayStation controllers. I feel like things could be just so much more fun and interactive than what they've gotten to, and I thought that it was an ingenious way to implement those kinds of things. Now, when it comes to my fear, I think the worst part for me was when I needed to go through vents. And I know that vents are a great way to get around in places, but for me, they were my greatest fear, because I cannot tell you. Remember, I'm playing this game at night in my room in the dark. So going into a dark ass vent and the fear that the xenomorph would just be in there was terrifying. I was always so afraid. I would be like traveling into one, and I like never used the flashlight. I get really stingy with resources, and when it was like, be very selective of when you use this, because things can also see it, and you don't get, lots of batteries, and like da-da-da-da, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna never use this, right? So I would like go into vents, and I would never use it, because I'm like, well, I don't want to alert the xenomorph that I'm in here. So my greatest fear was that I was gonna go into one, and then be crawling through no light, and then suddenly just be face to face with it, and I'm so glad that I never had that. I never met it in the vents, but that was a constant fear every time that I went into a floor vent or a wall vent. I also was truly not expecting the amount of emphasis that there was on checking rooms before you go into them, but not in the way of like, hey, there's like 3 androids in here, you need to take them out, but in a way of like, not everything was hostile in the game. There would be some rooms where there would be humans in it and they're not hostile. They're just kind of standing there and they're gonna let you pass and, you know, like whatever. And it was kind of the same thing with the working Joes. There were some of them that they weren't going to attack you. They were just kind of like working and doing their job. I wasn't expecting it to be as much of a, not only do you need to survey this room before you go into it of how many things are in here, but you also need to very quickly assess, is that friend or foe? Do I need to go in here with a Molotov ready, or can I just go in here and they're not going to bother me? I had a lot of fun trying to figure out, mainly because everything counted as a hostile. Because I can remember there's one save station on the side of a wall right next to a door, which like right through the door, there is a girl sitting on like a bench. She's not hostile towards you. She's kind of like existential. But when you save at that save station, it always says hostiles nearby. Even though like she's not aggro to you, she can become that way. And I thought that that was brilliant, that everything to a save station counted as hostile. That was really fun to try to figure out, should I save or does that mean the xenomorph is above me? The other thing that I just truly found great was that I love how visually, from an art style perspective, it felt to a T like the 1979 Alien movie, because it felt exactly like what people in like the 90s thought that like the future would look like. It felt exactly like every machine, except for the occasional one looks like a massive MRI machine. Most machines though felt exactly like what people thought tech in the future would look like. I thought that keeping that ideal from the 79 film was just the absolute correct choice. It made it feel retro in like a weird way. The game came out in 2014, I think, so it's strange that a 2014 game can make that vibe feel retro, because obviously the game is not retro. I don't know, like I think it just crafted such a perfect experience between visuals and gameplay that visually it was perfection. I have no notes. I wouldn't even want like the best graphics. Like I think that visually it is truly perfection. Which leads me into things that were not quite as perfection. I just want to talk about the story for like half a second. I just want to say, I know that it should not have taken me this long, but it didn't hit me until quite a few missions in who Amanda's mother was supposed to be, and that her mother was all of our mothers. The one, the only Sigourney Weaver. The fact that her mother was supposed to be Ellen Ripley from the 79 film did not hit me. I heard the name and obviously heard Amanda's full name, and I was like, why does Ripley sound so familiar? And then it hit me and I was like, oh my gosh, wait, that's who the first like movie was about. And Amanda's looking for the black box of what happened on that ship. And like I watched the 79 film, I don't know, years ago at this point. It all came rushing back of, oh, I understand now. As a whole, I thought that the story was great. I think that it was a great, somewhat, you know, sequel-ish, somewhat continuation of Amanda trying to find the black box and get any amount of closure for her mom and what happened and just not knowing. Like, I can't imagine my mom just like going to work and then being gone. Nobody can tell me whether she died, whether she is just lost, and it's like I'm stuck in this limbo of not knowing if I need to grieve or not knowing if I should be doing more to try to find her. I thought that they really portrayed that through Amanda incredibly well. Another part that I was not expecting to see any kind of character growth was Taylor and Samuels. Samuels, in my opinion, had a little less than Taylor did, but I still thought that they were incredible. I think that Taylor's surprised me the most, especially after finding that one log where it was essentially kind of revealed that she let Marlowe out because she wanted like information and secrets and stuff from the Anesidora to kind of take back to Weyland-Yutani. Even like that towards the end of Taylor trying to help Ripley stop the ship from blowing and ended up kind of sacrificing herself so that Ripley could live. I also was not expecting Samuel's, his death in general. That really shocked me. I actually like stood there in that room for like a half a minute being like, he's gonna come back, right? I also was not expecting the twist of he was an android the whole time. And I'm like, that's crazy. I never had any inkling that that was the case. that was a well-kept secret, and I feel like if I were to like replay it, I would notice things about him that I'm like, that makes sense. So I think they were probably two of my favorite characters that weren't Ripley. Ripley was absolutely my favorite. Her voice actor did an incredible job. I mean, I have never heard such like genuine reactions in a video game to date. Some of just the reactions to like things blowing up, or the guttural no that she yells when Taylor dies, or like the many fucks that she yells when things blow up or she falls, or I don't know. Like those were just such genuine human reactions that I'm just thoroughly impressed with her voice actor. Story-wise, I was loving and eating up that it slowly kind of became revealed, especially after you hear the transmission aboard the Anesidora, that Amanda is essentially repeating her mother's footsteps throughout the entire game. There is the had to blow the whole thing up, didn't know what it was, had to survive. I love when games or books or movies or, like whatever does that. It doesn't become apparent until later that the child or protege or like whatever is repeating the steps of the parent or the mentor or the older brother, whichever. I love that like plot. The other character that I absolutely loved and was not expecting was Marlowe. Marlowe was one of my favorites of the entire game. I adored him kind of asking like the rough questions. His entire thought process of we all have to die. If even one of us is left alive that has been in contact with these things at all, this cycle of death will never end. And by the end of the game, in truth, I expected more of them to have that kind of mindset. Truthfully, he's not entirely wrong. Like, don't take that wrong. Like, you can't just, like, mass murder people across the board. Like, you can't do that, But logically, his logic is sound. And you don't know people that have been infected or that have like a face hugger or like whatever in them. It's just not known. And you don't know if your ship has one until it's too late. I enjoyed his perspective to combat weights and stuff of, like we're gonna live, we're gonna get off of Sevastopol. Found that to be a good contradiction of people that had more optimistic ideals of this situation. Speaking of Marlowe though, one of my favorite missions of the whole game was mission 9, where you got to play as Marlowe in his flashback as he and his group from the Anesidora find the original alien ship. That was one of the best sequences in the whole game, in my opinion. It was atmospheric. You were at the point in the game where you were starting to kind of understand and piece together how some of this came about. It was insanely immersive to go through the ship, and I just had that feeling of dread and hesitation every turn that I took. Then when they finally went down that rope thing to find all of those eggs, I was like, oh god. It was kind of made apparent that one of them got attacked by a face hugger and they brought it on board to Sevastopol when they shouldn't have, and then it like all hell kind of broke loose. Other missions that I love was the first spacewalk that you take in, I believe it's mission 15, was I think for me the most immersive and jaw-dropping moment of the game. There was a close second that I'll talk about, but the spacewalk was an experience playing a video game that I don't think I will ever forget. I was just so in awe. I kept looking just like over the sides at the different planets. It was so immersive, and like I didn't even care that like you couldn't walk very fast in the spacesuit. I just stood there and looked at stuff because it was so beautiful. And for a game that came out 10 years ago, like it doesn't need updated graphics. It's gorgeous. I couldn't get over it. I probably stood there for a minute or two, just sat on my bed looking at it like this is incredible. I think that spacewalk will forever stick with me as like a person. The second most jaw-dropping moment for me is in mission 14 when you are down with like the reactor and the nest. The massive room with the reactor was insanely immersive. The wind or whatever with debris or rain or I don't even know. There's like something in that room that's like whipping, and the lightning strikes on either side of the main platform that were striking down on, I don't know if it was mini reactors or what those side things were, but were incredible. It kind of felt like something straight out of Final Fantasy VII being in one of the reactors towards the beginning of the game. The sound design in the room itself made me feel like I was there. I just use TV sound, like I don't have speakers or anything, but it still was just incredible. I could almost feel the danger being in a place like that through the gameplay. Both of those moments are truly things that I don't know if I will ever forget. The feeling of playing through for the first time. Time for the bad. And I hate having to make this part because it is truly the only bad thing that I have to say about this game at all. And for me, it's the ending. And I know I'm gonna get some probably heated comments for some of the points that I make, but hear me out. The ending was something. I'm not going to say that it was garbage because I don't think that it was garbage, but I also don't think that it was good, in my opinion. I don't think that a story that is as linear should have had an ending that ended in ambiguity. I think that was truly the only disappointment from this game for me personally. I have, since beating the game, read theories online because with any game that ends ambiguously, you have people online talking about what happened at the end. So I went and I was reading some of the theories of what people had of what exactly happened at the end of the game. And I have seen two main sides emerge. And I kind of understand both sides, and I don't really feel one way or the other towards what I think was what happened. And this is going to be disregarding anything like if there's like a sequel or I don't know. I'm not into alien lore, but this is disregarding any of that. I'm talking about the game itself. So essentially, you have the one side where there are people that say that the entire sequence aboard the Torrens was a nightmare because of a few key facts. And I'm just going to point out too, that I will say I did notice while I was playing, and it did ping in my brain as that's really odd, but it didn't immediately push me to the idea that this was a nightmare. It did ping me as odd. I will fully admit that. The first point being that this is the first time in the entire game that she doesn't remove her spacesuit upon immediately entering a place where you would do that. And I will say, to me, with Amanda being an engineer and someone so methodical, it does seem out of place that she does not remove the suit. That did ping me as odd. Every other time in the entire game that you put on a spacesuit, she immediately puts it on when she goes out and she immediately takes it off when she comes back in. The other main point that people point to is that gameplay-wise, you move when you are aboard the Torrens at that end sequence. You move at normal speed, whereas every other time in the entire game, when you are in the spacesuit, you move incredibly slow. Whether that be outside or inside or whatever, you move clunky and you move at like normal speed gameplay-wise, which is odd. You know, I think that if they didn't mean to do that at the very end, then I find it odd that in an otherwise incredibly polished game, they made such a mistake as that. So with those 2 points mainly, I think that there is some merit to that theory, that the entire sequence aboard the Torrens was a nightmare and that she hit her head and is knocked out. The other side says that everything in the Torrens was real, essentially. But this is where that main theory kind of deviates. After that point, then what, right? And I see a whole bunch of people that bicker about who they think is the owner of the light that was shown on her helmet when she was in space. And I see 3 main guesses emerge. I see some people that say that it was the real Torrens and that it's Verlaine coming to pick her up. Part of the sequence in the Torrens was a nightmare and she got knocked out, and now Verlaine is taking the real Torrens to go pick her up. That's a theory. Some people say that it's her mother, that her mother managed to find her in space after following her footsteps to like a T and managed to pick her up. I'm gonna say I think that one in particular is really far-fetched. And then there are some people that say that it was Weyland-Yutani, that they were sending a ship to Sevastopol because they were kind of monitoring the xenomorph and they wanted to see what was going on, and obviously Ripley would have all of the information that they would want, so they picked her up to basically interrogate her. So I don't really feel like I'm on one side or the other. I don't really fully believe that it was a nightmare sequence, and I don't really fully believe that all of it was real either. So I feel like I'm kind of just stuck in the middle, disappointed in a non-canon concrete ending. I will say, just to like soften my argument, I suppose, I don't hate ambiguous endings on principle. I don't think that ambiguous endings to things are trash across the board. I don't think that. I think that they can be extremely well done when done well. Two examples that come to mind. The first one is the ending of the Annihilation movie, which is obviously based on the book by Jeff Vandermeer, but that was a ambiguous ending done incredibly well. The second one being the uncertainty at the end of The Thing, directed by John Carpenter. The fact that we never get an answer if either of them are the Thing is the best part of it, is that you end the movie still being uncertain as you have been uncertain of who is infected. The Thing has had theories for decades. No one will ever know if either of them were the Thing, if they were both infected, if neither of them were, or if one of them was. We just won't know, and I think that that was the best place to end out a movie that played with uncertainty so much, was to end it out like that. So I think that ambiguity can be exceptional when it is done in something that is already so seeped in uncertainty. However, nothing about the story of Alien Isolation was uncertain. Only the fate of her mother was the only uncertainty in the game, other than like how did the xenomorph get on board. And both of those were answered throughout the game. Marlowe brought it back, and then the message towards the end of the game that Ellen Ripley had left for Amanda, that also got an answer. So I think a story that is so linear and from so like plot point to plot point, and there are no smoke and mirrors or anything, that ending that on such an ambiguous note was just not the correct choice. You can agree with me, you can disagree, you can whatever. And if you enjoyed the ending, then I'm really glad that you did, and this is just my gripe. This is just my gripe with the game. It doesn't need to be yours as well. Like, I'm not trying to convince you not to like it. This is just my personal thoughts on how it felt to me when I played the game. In the end, the game is still one of the greatest video games of all time. It may not be my favorite game ever, let's be honest here, nothing is going to ever dethrone Skyrim from that spot, but it is one of the greatest games ever created, and after playing it, I would be insane not to think that. The way that the game adapts to your personal playstyle of games is revolutionary, and you never see that in games these days, and I still don't feel like I've ever seen a game match it. And I am so surprised that it took me this long to finally bite the bullet and just swallow my fear and play it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you made it this far, then thank you truly. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to listen to me yap more about my favorite games. That's gonna be it from me today though. I love you guys, and don't forget to use fire on any face huggers.